We're rolling. This is the D&J podcast. You already know what's about to come down. Right. Welcome to the first ever D&J podcast / talk show. We've got big aspirations for this talk show, haven't we?
Yes.
So
definitely.
first of all, my name's Jack. I'm 23 years old and I'm a BMX rider. So I'm going to be giving you a unique perspective on the way that I view the world versus how Donald here views the world. So I'm going to hand you over to Donald and then we'll go from there.
Okay, so my name's Donald, but everyone calls me Deej. So I'm 28 years old. I'm a personal trainer and natural bodybuilder, and I've known Jack for 2 years now, something around there. And when we first met, we kind of really resonated just because a lot of the ideas and the concepts that we have about kind of like success and just generally how to manage our lives come from very similar places, even though we've got very, very different backgrounds and different implementation. We're finding that the principles of what we do are very, very similar. So when we get together, we can literally just chat for hours just about just what we think is just stuff, but we know that a fly on the wall might find kind of the sort of stuff that we chat about like quite interesting. So that's the way the idea for this podcast came about.
I just want to add on to what you just said there, how we can chat for hours and stuff, because it's not just like an average chat, is it really? Because, well, from my point of view, when I get to you, I feel like a strong energy within you without making your head too big. Yeah, it's like I feel inspired, and it's like it adds value to my day just like that. And then I'm like, right, boom, I need to go and do this, this, and this, in accordance to what we were having a chat about, which is what we want to bring you guys along with to try and sort of add value to your daily routines and whatever it is that you're finding challenging, whether it's problems, whether it's personal, whether it's business related, whatever. But going back to what you said earlier as well on how we met, I'd like to go into that in another episode because it's very interesting. Not your average, like how friendships form. It just sort of worked, didn't it? Just like that. So it's and it's kind of on the basis of how we started this podcast at the same time as well. So yeah, I think we've got a good introduction there to the podcast, and in order for this podcast to be brought to you guys, you watching this now, understand that we have jumped through hoops to make this happen, haven't we?
Probably a good year in the making.
We right now?
We are currently sat in my garage, which is also my personal training studio, as our original space that we had planned, where it'd be nice and quiet, be central heated, because right now it is probably about 2 degrees. The lighting would have been spot on, we'd have been able to have a camera, like everything was planned out perfect. That all just went out the window this morning. However, we have tried and failed to get this done so many times. It was right, today is the day, we're getting something filmed, even if it is...
Nothing is standing in the way. Like, this is on my iPhone right now, on Donald's tripod, and we're sat on a bench.
A bench, yeah.
Like you say, in your gym. We had plans to have all this camera equipment. We was going to have sounds. I was going to bring the light in. We was going to structure the whole podcast so we knew exactly what we was going to say, when we was going to say it. But that didn't happen, did it? No. But regardless, we was having this podcast out today. We had a vision. Today is going to be the making of the first podcast, and we're still making it happen, even though the odds were stacked against us pretty much. So I think that in itself is a good start to our journey.
So basically the principle kind of we're talking about today is when you want something, you make it happen. Like, there's been umpteen obstacles thrown in our way. We've tried and failed at this many, many times, but we set a deadline, and today was the day that this first one was dropping, and therefore it's just happened and we've made it happen. It's not been ideal, it's not the crisp kind of final cut we would have probably liked, but at the end of the day, it's episode 1. We're only going to improve, and if we can get some feedback from you guys on what you'd like to hear, how crap we are, how rubbish the audio is. If you give us that feedback, we will go away and we will work on it, and we want to make sure we're adding value to you as much as it's just about us chatting. So if it's a particular subject you want us to cover, whether you want me to talk about kind of bodybuilding, how I fit training into my day or things like that, if you want Jack to talk more about kind of his experience kind of with his BMX, we can make sure that we are answering questions. We'll be dropping into those comments as well. Like, if you take the time to leave us feedback, we will make sure that we get back to you.
You hit the nail on the head there, man. Adding value to people's lives. That is the main concept of this podcast in all its shapes and forms. So with the message being that you make it happen, like regardless, so whatever background you come from, whether you've got, you know, whether you're in the right friendship groups, whether you're in the right business, whether you come from the right family, it doesn't matter. There's many examples out there that prove that it can be done, you know, like you say, we come from different backgrounds and stuff, but yet we're still here, we're still in this podcast, it's still happening right now. And I'm a firm believer in the fact that everything happens for a reason. So, on that note, let's sort of go deeper into ourselves, just so they know who they're listening to, and maybe there's something I don't know about you, maybe there's something you don't know about me. You know? So, like we say, I'm Jack, I'm the BMX rider, and I feel I've acquired a unique mindset through my BMX journey that has been transferable across all areas of my life, which maybe you're struggling to transfer it to one area, maybe you're fruitful but you just need somebody to affirm you that you're in the right direction, and that's what we're here to do, to tell you that you're doing a great job regardless of what you're doing and whatever background it is. So like I say, I'm the BMX rider. I've travelled all over the country, I've done contests, I won the IBMX World Championship in 2016, many TV appearances, Blue Peter, all that lot. Yeah, I got my little badge. Got my little badge. So apparently you can go in Alton Towers with that badge for free, and your whole family gets in. So if you want to borrow it, yeah. So anyway, that's where I come from, but it goes deeper than that. There's much more involved, which, you know, it's too long for one podcast. We'll go into that as the story unfolds, and obviously during that story, me and Donald's paths crossed, and this is where we are. So you're a bodybuilder. How does that coincide with this podcast? Where's your journey? How has it led you to be sat here in this moment right now?
Okay, so I'll go back to kind of where I started from in terms of just training in general. So I think I picked my first weight when I was about 13 years old, just because I wanted to have abs and have bigger arms, because that's what girls want, right? Like most boys, when they kind of get into weight training, it's for girls. Yeah. At the end of the day. Fast forward to being 17, 18, I'm at college studying sport and exercise science, and actually getting my first mentor when it comes to training. It's the first time I've ever been shown properly how to train. Between 13 and 17 I was doing everything wrong, again, like most teenage boys. So I got my first mentor, I got my first experience of what it's like to be coached when it comes to training, and that just kind of lit a spark in the back of my head, like, I want that feeling, I want to be able to inspire that feeling in others. At the time I was training to be better at rugby, so played quite high level sport, got up to playing semi-professional at university, then picked up an injury and had to then go into the gym to rehab that injury, and that's where my real kind of love of training got sparked. It wasn't from like wanting to look better or things like that, it was I had a problem and I had to fix it. So went off to, as I said, was at university, got my sports science degree, went off, got qualified as a personal trainer, started working in gyms, and then, as I said, the majority of what I did to start off with was recovering from injury. So I'm not a physio. What I would do is take over from when the physio's finished to go from kind of rehabilitation to it's called prehabilitation, or making sure that you are kind of like at optimal.
Okay.
And was also again playing rugby. Then got into a relationship. Rugby had to go out the window just because I think I stopped playing rugby at about 25, just because it was very painful on a Sunday morning.
You don't bounce as well as you used to.
Exactly. 18 years old, you bounce out of bed after a full game. But yeah, 25, 26, those bruises follow you around for a few days. And then for a year or two, I kind of really lost my way when it came to training, just because I had no purpose anymore.
Yeah.
So before that, it was training to be better at my sport. Whereas once that purpose was gone, I was training, but I was just kind of like spinning the wheels, not really doing anything. And then I got into kind of bodybuilding again, but like the natural side of bodybuilding, like the whole steroids and performance enhancing drugs. Like, I'm not going to bash it. If somebody wants to do that, that is on them. And like, these guys that are on it are incredible athletes. They still have to train really, really hard. It's just not for me. Because actually by looking into that, you realize how many fitness people out there that are claiming to be natty just aren't. You can look at their physique and you can go, no, that's not. That's
See,
not
I can
possible.
translate what you're kind of saying through like BMX riding styles and personalities and things. But it's interesting what you're saying there for like when you had the year or two where you kind of lost your purpose, and that's kind of like the deeper part of the activity. So like the bodybuilding is like what you can see on the outside, but what's going on in the inside that nobody can see is like internal battles with yourself that hopefully this podcast will sort of address that and sort of figure out ways that through experiences that we've done that we've got around those obstacles, and then like, you know, even our audience can sort of, we're going to learn from our audience as well as they're going to, you know, so it's going to be a two-way relationship.
Well, one thing I found from that period in my life was that because I have no purpose, because I have no why, when stuff got tough, I would just give up because there was no compelling driving force behind me pushing through that discomfort. And that's probably the biggest lesson that I've brought from kind of the bodybuilding side is you've got to have a why. That process of building muscle is painful. Like when you're on the last couple of reps of say like a drop set on a hack squat with bands, like your brain will be screaming at you to stop. But you still have more left in the tank. You still have to push yourself past that point of breaking. If you've not got a compelling reason to do so, you're going to go, screw this.
It hurts.
It's not worth it. It hurts it. Why
put myself through pain?
Exactly.
Yeah, I completely understand that. So sometimes your why has to be bigger than yourself as well.
Yes.
No, I completely understand that. It's like when I was learning to do backflips, you know, I wouldn't rotate fully. I'd land on my face, you know, I'd break my fingers. It hurts, but there's just that internal drive that's like, nah, this isn't, you know, I've gone through all this pain, I've got to this point, I'm not giving up now. So, you know, I didn't go through all that pain for no reason, I'm getting the results. And that is across the board, whatever industry you're in. I don't care whether it's beauticians, whether it's cheerleading, whether it's basketball, whatever. That's the bottom line. You just keep pushing through. So no, I completely agree with what you're saying, and that's inspiring in itself. And so we got to the point where you're sort of 25 now, you're just starting to pick it up, you're getting a bit more seriously. So where did you go from there?
So I dipped in and out of it for a little while, picked up some like online programs from different like fitness people, just because again, ego, I'm a trainer, I don't need a trainer, I don't need somebody to be telling me what to do. Basically bounced back and forth between these different programs, was trying to like bulk on my own. I've always found it easy to cut, so it was the bulking side of it. And then I found out my partner was pregnant with our daughter, and it was like a whole new ball game. So
you're a family man now as well.
Yeah, so basically as I've always been about 10 kilos heavier than my partner, so as she was growing our baby and therefore adding weight on. I was like, yeah, I'll stay 10 kilos ahead of you. And I did so up until probably midway through the third trimester, and then it accelerated and I just couldn't do it anymore. Ballooned up to about 80 odd kilos. There's some photos of me on
I
there where I
remember
look
this
pregnant.
stage of your life as well.
So,
we went on a photo shoot at this point.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And yeah, like probably not the happiest period because my bulk had just gone completely out of control.
Yeah.
That was then a turning point, as in I think I cut down myself a little bit of weight there, because Willow was about 6 months old when I got my trainer, so that would have been the June sort of time. I did my own cut, managed to drop 4 or 5 kilos quite quickly. I just couldn't push back down to those low levels that I'd been at.
Yeah.
And it then crept back on as the winter period came back in. And then it got to December and I was like, right, that's it. Like, I'm drawing a line in the sand. Next year I'm going to compete. So to do that, I'm doing something that I've never done before. For the first time ever, I'm going to hire a coach, hire a mentor.
Yeah.
And I hired my coach, I think it was in the December, and we went through then a 10-week recomposition, it was called, basically dropping the body fat back off me so we could see what was there. We did a very short off season of building new tissue, and then I did my first competition. I prepped for about 13 weeks, and then there was another competition 4 weeks after that. So in total, I was dieting for about 18 weeks in total. So that was kind of like my first, it was my first time on stage, and it really, really brought home to me some different kind of principles in terms of accountability, having a mentor when you're trying to do something that you've never done before, because you can learn from their experience. Like, one of the quotes Mark gave me was, the only thing that is more valuable than experience is somebody else's experience.
Yeah.
Because I then don't have to make that time investment to learn that bad experience because it's already been done,
absolutely.
Which means I can skip that learning curve is a lot faster. My mentor's already been there and has already made those mistakes for me, so he can say, well, this isn't working, let's try this instead.
So going from when you first picked up, so that whole story, that whole timeline, that period of your life, so obviously where you've gone from picking up weights because you wanted abs to impress girls to now being like, right, I'm on stage now in front of all these people, bodybuilding. That whole, from that point there, from where you was to where you are now, it's worlds apart. But there's things in that process that you've had to go through in order to get there, and it's still not finished. No, it's still right up there. You got to go up there. Yeah. So, and that's the fascinating part. That's it's scientific, psychological, spiritual, whatever you want to call it. It's not visible to the eye, whereas it's not always sort of easily understandable unless you experience those types of, and you're aware that you're going through those types of phases or challenges or whatever, and then you're just like in the moment. Sometimes you need to just take a step back, sort of like an out of body experience, to be like, right, okay, this is what I'm faced with. I either go back and hide, or I attack, and you grow through it. So yeah, that's awesome. I can totally relate. Like, I was 15 when I first got a BMX bike. It was for my 15th birthday. Like, thank God my parents got me a BMX bike on that birthday. Like, that completely changed my life. Like, I went from being a footballer, just your typical troublesome teenage footballer, to then sort of getting a BMX bike. But that really shifted me from like my peer group at school. So like, I then put myself as an outsider, which was quite a tricky time for me at school because no one could understand. They're like, you had all these friends, you was popular at school, so why are you chucking all that away when you're you're on top, you're a good footballer. Like, I was always like the small fast kid that stuck on the wing and was like running up and down the pitch like a lunatic. And then like almost like overnight, I was like the outsider that had no like common ground with anybody, and like that was sort of like year 10 and 11 at school, so that was quite tricky. But then once I got out of that, that's a whole podcast in itself, that sort of period. So I'll just briefly go around my story, just so you get a good insight as to who you're listening to, really. Like, who's this guy? Who does he think he is? It's like, so yeah. Anyway, and then I went to college, and I got a job in a local indoor skate park. This is a significant, like, this was like make or break moment. So I got sponsored by Two-Legged Dog, Sam Johnson. Hopefully, I plan to get him on this podcast at some point, because this guy has got like an incredible view on the world that I could only wish to have. So this guy, he hired me, he sponsored me, he gave me so many opportunities that then led to being riding for other companies, competitions, world records, things like that. Anyway, and then obviously he became, like, at the time I wasn't aware this was happening, but hindsight looking back, I'm like, wow, that was like a massive part of my life. So he took me like under his wing, and like he was essentially my mentor at that point of my life. Like, I had this bike, I had this talent that, you know, it could have gone the other way, that I could have just been a stray kid and I could have easily got into drugs. Like, I've been around all kinds of people, because it's kind of associated in a way that it shouldn't be, because it's people outside of the sport that are sort of tagging on that give it the bad name. But anyway, I could have easily fell off, and that guy kept me on the straight and narrow. Unfortunately, the skate park had to close, and then, you know, the past went. But the lessons that guy taught me kept me going onwards and upwards, and then I created my own brand from it, studio brand. This is where it came from, through like a philosophy that I've been passed down, and I've sort of made it my own and grew from it. So that's where studio brand came from, by the way. Yeah. So which, you know, Donald's been a massive part of since day one. So then, yeah, the story continues. I ended up winning the World Championship in 2016, which, you know, for anybody's standard, it's you know, it's a massive achievement for anybody. Attempting world records down in London, doing shows all over the country with Fusion Extreme, you know, things like that. And you know, I get to meet all kinds of people from all kinds of backgrounds, this and that, and you know, I get to inspire people through my activity. But in order for me to get to the level to inspire people through that activity, I've had to overcome some internal challenges that can be transferred from industry to industry, which is where we can sort of relate, if you like. And then, yeah, here I am today. I'm a business owner and a BMX rider, and now a member of a podcast.
Yeah. So
I'm super excited for this, man. Like, honestly, I cannot wait to get the content out there, get it flowing, you know. And, you know, as long as one person finds value in what we're saying and it has an impact on their life, I'll keep on. We will keep on doing it.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
I think that's probably a good place to leave the first episode.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So yeah, just kind of a little bit of a summary. Obviously, we've introduced ourselves, gone over a little bit of kind of our past and our philosophies, and then we've laid down one principle for today, which was just get it done. Like, you've got an idea in your head, just get it done.
Against all the odds.
Yeah.
No one's stopping you but you. So,
cool.
This is D&J Podcast Show. Hope you enjoyed it. Also, just before I leave as well, this is like a bench point for us. So our podcast is going to take all kinds of shapes and forms. You know, whatever me and Donald can get together, and you know, whatever format it comes out in, the quality and the content will remain the same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Happy with that.
I'm Jack Tones.
And I'm Deej.
And we are out of here. Awesome. One take.